Low carb burns 2.5 times more fat mass than low fat.
I've already shown you now that in the endocrine model, we have this unique use of energy in the form of brown fat, where we are uncoupling the mitochondria just to produce heat, to use glucose just to fuel the fire. But in the case of the endocrine theory of obesity, we have another idea where we have another outlet of energy, and this is, in fact, in the form of ketones themselves. And so if insulin is low in the human body, we are then turning acetyl-CoA into ketones. And then some of these, and remember, where's acetyl-CoA coming from? Appreciate this. It's coming from nutrients like predominantly lipid and carbohydrate. So we are literally taking pieces. If we look at a fat molecule, we've started cutting the fat molecule up into small pieces. And these pieces are acetyl-CoA, and then we convert them into ketones. So we're literally taking pieces of fat, turning it into ketones. And then what do we start doing it with it when we're in ketosis? We start breathing it out. And what else do we do? Yes, we start urinating it out. This is happening in a person, depending on the depth of ketosis, 5 to 20 times more than the average individual. So appreciate what that means. We're taking pieces of fat and we're just wasting it to the environment. Can you appreciate what that means? I mean, it's quite remarkable. We're breathing out fat and we're urinating out little pieces of fat. I mean ketones, these little teeny pieces of lipid that have turned into ketones. We are wasting it from the body. And this is, again, a reckoning, an accounting of energy that is quite unique to the endocrine theory.
Turning fat into ketones so it can be wasted from the body. This is happening 5 to 20 times more when we are in ketosis. It's taking pieces of fat and simply wasting it into the environment. Dr. Bikman says, this is an accounting for energy unique to the endocrine model. It debunks the worn-out theory of calories in, calories out.
And this is why you start to have some wiggle room when it comes to you're a little in caloric excess, and yet you can still lose more weight than someone else. It's because we have this wiggle room, this wasting of energy, not to mention the increased usage that I'd already shown you. This study from just a few years ago from David Ludwig's lab, putting people on 3 diets differing in macronutrient content. You'll notice the y-axis is similar to the y-axis that I showed you when we measured metabolic rate in the mice. They measured metabolic rate in the humans. And you'll see that metabolic rate was highest in the lowest carb group. But this was isocaloric, so they're eating the exact same number of calories, and yet their metabolic rate was the highest of all. Perhaps some evidence of increased usage. Increased uncoupling would account for increased oxygen use, which is really what that's measuring when they're looking at metabolic rate.
In a study in humans, the low-carb group had the highest metabolic rate.
This study is unique. It's interesting, and the title says it all. They put humans into 2 groups. One was the classic low-calorie, so a calorie-restricted, low-fat diet. The other was a calorie-unrestricted, low-carb diet. In other words, it was ad libitum. Eat however much you'd like. Now, what's interesting, in the end, they actually ended up eating about the same. As many of you know, you end up just controlling your appetite anyway. You're not going, it's not always bonanza and you're going crazy. You end up just self-regulating. And that's what happened here. The actual caloric consumption ended up being equal, even though one group was told you can eat as much as you'd like. They lost over twice as much fat mass over the course of this study.
In the second study, the low-carb group could eat as much as desired. They lost 2.5 times more weight than the low-fat group.
But that shouldn't have happened, and even the authors acknowledge this. Because they were eating the same amount of calories, and yet one group lost 2.5 times more fat mass, they should have been eating less, but they weren't. And more evidence of this fact that there's some extra usage of energy or some degree of wasting, perhaps.
Annotated and summarized. Easy to share with loved ones. The description below the title for this video has these summary points. When insulin is low, acetyl-CoA is turned into ketones. Acetyl-CoA is from lipid, fat, and glucose, carbs. Cut fat molecules into small pieces of ketones. When in ketosis, meaning you are fat adapted or fat burning is your body's metabolic priority, you can lose weight even when in a caloric excess. Turning fat into ketones so it can be wasted from the body. This is happening 5 to 20 times more when we are in ketosis. It's taking pieces of fat and simply wasting it into the environment. Dr. Bikman says, this is an accounting for energy unique to the endocrine model. It debunks the worn-out theory of calories in, calories out. In a study in humans, the low-carb group had the highest metabolic rate. In a second study, the low-carb group could eat as much as desired. They lost 2.5 times more weight than the low-fat group. This is more evidence that there is some extra use or waste of energy when we're in ketosis.